Welcome, everyone. I'm Tracy Fitzpatrick, and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you so much for joining us here at Netcom Learning, a market leader in promoting lifelong learning, training, and talent development solutions. We are very excited to host today's event, Microsoft Security Copilot Masterclass, Securing the New Era of AI. Presenting today's topic is Logan Hillard. Logan is a cybersecurity instructor with over 4 years of experience and has worked in multiple security projects. He has successfully delivered numerous corporate trainings to date for various clients across the globe. Please bear in mind that this is an overview of a very robust topic. We offer a collection of technical and business courses that can be tailored to your specific requirements. If you are interested in a further discussion, you can make an appointment with our learning consultants through our website at netcomlearning.com. Today's session is also being recorded, so you'll get free access to the recording in the next 24 hours via email. Netcom Learning helps customers build innovative learning organizations by achieving a smarter workforce, adapting to change, and driving growth. We do this with a broad catalog of offerings, developing customized learning plans, and our global delivery capabilities. Since 1998, we have been empowering organizations with our managed learning services to help them reach optimal performance results and address challenges. We do have 9 practice areas in which we specialize. They encompass people, process, and technology training. Today's presentation is from the Data and AI practice area. Netcom Learning offers a comprehensive training portfolio of courses for the topic being covered today. Our upcoming classes include various trainings on the given courses. You can also access a variety of marketing assets, such as the free training and blogs, by clicking on the available event handout. These offerings can be found with a simple search on our website at netcomlearning.com. Today's session will cover insights into cutting-edge strategies for protecting AI systems and mastering the latest strategies in AI security. This masterclass has been designed with best practices and innovative tools to secure your AI-driven initiatives in this new era of technology. In addition, participants will get guidance on effectively preparing for the SC 5006 certification course and exams in today's session. And now I would like to give you a quick overview of the logistics before we get started. To begin with, you do have the option to view in full screen by clicking on the full screen button on the right side of the GoToWebinar viewer. Simply hit the escape key to exit the full screen. Everyone has been muted except for our presenters. Feel free to submit any questions you have for the presenters here in the questions pane, and we will address them at the end of the session. And to get the best out of today's events, we've included the slides, courses we talk about, and marketing assets in the handout section of your GoToWebinar viewer. You may refer to them at any time to get a better understanding of today's topic. And we do realize that some of you may have to leave early and want to let you know that as you do leave the session today, you will be presented with a short survey. We would like to request for you to take a quick moment to participate in that survey. Your feedback really helps us understand your learning experience and improve our future sessions for you. The survey answers are measured on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 representing outstanding and 1 representing poor. And now I'd like to pass this over to our trainer to present today's topic. Hey, Logan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tracy. Hello, everyone. My name is Logan Hillard. I have a background in network engineering, systems administration, and I'm currently doing cybersecurity instruction as a trade. As a technologist, I'm interested in all things artificial intelligence and LLMs. Always interested in the latest and greatest and whatever models are being pushed out. And that's what we'll be covering today. Again, thank you for joining this Netcom Masterclass called Microsoft Security Copilot, Securing the New Era of Artificial Intelligence. We will be covering a lot of foundational material, especially for those of you where AI is still kind of a new concept. For instance, if you're still calling it AI, right? That's kind of the first the first way to know where you're currently at on your journey. And I'll get into that. All right. Of course, we'll be talking about the current landscape, having a pretty introductory conversation to where artificial intelligence currently is and how it's affecting the world. We'll of course introduce the product, and then we'll talk about some of its capabilities and practical applications and use cases for the product as well. Okay. So first things first, understanding the security threat landscape in the era of AI. Um, let's have kind of a introduction conversation to this. First of all, artificial intelligence. If you ever hear artificial intelligence, you're talking about LLMs, and an LLM is a large language model. There's no such thing as artificial intelligence. It doesn't currently exist in an actual form that we could call AI. Normally, people are talking about AGI, artificial general intelligence, and that does not exist in the world. The only thing that really exists is LLMs, and an LLM is actually uh, just a program. You could call it an algorithm that is synced up with a big data set on the back end. You can really describe LLMs as big data with a computer. A computer can answer a question by referencing a very large data source, kind of like a database. So that's essentially the way the LLMs are described. That's what they are. It's what AI is. And of course, as these tools have been created and have come into existence, they have been changing the threat landscape because they are a form of automation, right? So first thing, red teams are using AI to automate cyber attacks. That is obviously true because these AI platforms, things like ChatGPT and the like, they all are capable of, again, automation. So if you ask it, hey, can you help me create some malware? Maybe the one online can't do it because there are some security controls, but you could just download one, turn all the security controls off, and then just use it locally. So LLMs, again, are not only in the cloud, they're not only on ChatGPT, they're not only paid versions, there are free and open source versions that you can just download, run on your own system, and you're good. There's even a full new type of processing unit, either known as an LPU for language processing unit or NPU, known as a neural processing unit. And these new components for motherboards are actually used specifically for artificial intelligence, for LLMs. It's a completely separate component than CPUs and GPUs. New component, pretty wild. They're selling some Security Copilot new devices. Windows dropping some new laptops and desktops with Security Copilot already ready to go. And that is based off their NPU, their neural processing unit. So again, the landscape is definitely changing. Literally right now, this month, next month, and the month after that, that release is going to ramp up. I have some people. Again, this is all very new, so I have some people that are purchasing that equipment, and they're going to get back to me on how it works, if it is interesting, anything like that, because that could really revolutionize LLMs. Why go and spend money online when you just have an NPU on board on your system that you could just utilize for all this processing? Why do it in the cloud when you can do it locally? They're calling it edge processing, I think, which is an older term, but is coming back around. Instead of doing it in the cloud, just do it on the PC. So red teams are starting to utilize this as a way to attack targets, right? They see it as a way to help them automate their process. And again, attackers always use automation because it's just easier, very similar to the way that blue teamers use automation because it is just easier. It helps you do things. Of course, they're using it for all their mischievous things as well. Blue teams are also using it to help automate defenses, though. So it is helping out both sides. Automating defenses, I think, is a little bit more complicated than automating attacks because whenever I ask it to do something on the attack side, it's like, hey, make sure that can you rewrite this code to do the exact same thing, but to have a different hash? That would be a very simple ask of an LLM, in my opinion. So, but on the blue team side, you might be saying, okay, you know, be sure to block all traffic coming into my network from anything that looks malicious. That would not be a very good blue team, but that's more of a prompt issue, right? We'll talk about prompts later on. Of course, deepfakes and disinformation are on the rise. There was that really creepy one about I can never remember this guy's name. I don't know why. I should be able to, but the owner of Facebook, also known as Meta, uh, Zuckerberg. There we go. There was a deep fake of Zuckerberg, and normally the way that you can tell that it's a deep fake is that they're not moving. They oftentimes sit very still, and the newer deep fakes are a lot more animated. They have head movement going on and things like that. But it still could be pretty easy to distinguish a deep fake from the real thing, especially if they are sat down in a seat and they don't really respond to a lot of external stimuli or anything like that. You can kind of tell that that's fake and automated. But again, most people can't. Right? This is actually something that a lot of people are going to have problems with. I'm of the millennial generation. I always remember being taught by my teachers and my parents and the like that you shouldn't believe everything that you see on the internet. And I think that is becoming a very big problem for the world. There are a few generations that I think were very that are not susceptible to that, and there are a few other generations that are. Some of us who grew up on the internet are having less difficulty being able to distinguish fact from fiction, and people who were introduced to the internet later on in life, or even those who were kind of raised with the internet, um, are having difficulties kind of separating fact from fiction there. So again, I'm very thankful for the timeline that I grew up in because to me this is all just sometimes a bunch of nonsense, right? It's definitely dangerous in many ways because of the disinformation that affects people's opinion, which affects a lot of different things after that, of course. Um, but these two things are definitely on the rise, and you need to be aware of them. It's not just like, oh yeah, that's happening occasionally. It'll definitely be used for something very important at some point to try to convince a large portion of the population that something has happened. That's almost without a doubt. What that will be, what that campaign will entail, is a little bit less obvious. But it'll be a big deal. It'll try to pit people against each other. It'll try to do something ominous, malicious in nature. So just be aware of that, right? I don't know if there's anything else in this slide deck that is more important than what I just said. But just please be aware that that is happening, and it is going to affect everyone at some point if it hasn't affected you already. So with new tools and new technologies, of course, comes new attack vectors, right? So these attack vectors are against the LLMs themselves. Right. So again, let's say that I spin up a SIEM or like an EDR and I roll that out to my entire environment. That's a new attack vector. Yes, a security control. Yes, a security tool, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't have vulnerabilities, right? So these new attack vectors in the LLMs are going to be their own style of cybersecurity incident, cybersecurity threat, right? Because these LLMs store what now, right? What is it? What do we talk about? The LLMs are just an application or an algorithm in front of big data. So the big data is where all the information is stored that it is learned and trained on, right? And that is basically a large database of potentially sensitive information. So the LLM now becomes a target. Kind of funny how that turns around. So the LLMs are not just a new tool; they are a new attack vector for red teams. Right? Remember, red team is attacker, blue team is defender. And of course, with sensitive information and databases and having to store information locally and all those things, or even in the cloud, data privacy becomes a concern. When you have a bunch of sensitive information and you don't really know what to do with it, where you're storing it, what's going on, right? How do you know if it's going to stay private? There's even with Security Copilot, we'll talk about this at some point, I believe. I think on one of the slides. Um, it has access to things like Purview, Microsoft Purview. Microsoft Purview is essentially a big database of all of your information, all of your data, um, um, basically categorized and tracked in 365. So for compliance, that's great, right? But Security Copilot also, Microsoft understands that there can't just be connections to everything from everywhere, if that makes sense. So you have to block or allow access to data as needed on like a case by case basis for LLMs. So you can't just say, yeah, I want you to have access to everything. I mean, you can, but Microsoft is starting to understand that there are organizations where that is not okay because the data set that the LLM may have access to is under some form of compliance that doesn't allow that level of access, et cetera, et cetera. So there are data privacy issues kind of surrounding LLMs, and that is confusing, right? It's not just let me access the data and then ingest it and interact with it and spit out some data whenever you ask for it. You have to realize that there are things happening with that data that could break compliance, right? Again, there's this whole thing with ChatGPT where they reached out to people reached out to them and said, "Hey, I realize that like what you're doing is really cool. I may even love your product, but you stole data from my organization or from me. You stole IP, intellectual property, from me, and I did not give you consent to have that." Right? Whenever there are works of art or just works in general that are borrowed or copied by humans, right? That's a problem, right? You borrow a copy of that without giving that person credit, and now there has been a crime committed. But OpenAI at the moment, who was originally a nonprofit, which is now changing to a for-profit, which is its own problem. OpenAI has basically said, look, we've already taken all the data. The product is already out there. What's the problem? Like it's all on the internet. Anyone could gather this information because all we did was scrape the entire internet. Literally, they copied the entire internet as the backbone for OpenAI for its big data set. Um, and yeah, so they're definitely in a weird spot right now where there's so many people using the product that like they're definitely not going to turn the machine off, right? Definitely not. But are they going to get sued? We'll see. That's again all of this stuff is very much real time and very much in motion, right? So some of the things that we talk about today are again the current landscape. It's not simple either to follow because there are so many new products coming out. Like one of my favorites right now, my favorite LLM is probably known as Grok, um, and that is Groq. Grok is a very fast LLM, and the reason why it's so fast is because they created the LPU. The founders at Grok have developed a new processing unit specifically for LLMs. So it has its own design, it has its own architecture, and that's again that revolutionized an entire industry, and now everyone's trying to catch up, including Microsoft. Everyone was behind. Nobody was really thinking that like, oh, it needs its own processing unit. Very similar to when graphics processing needed a GPU versus a CPU. It's the same thing. Artificial intelligence or LLM processing actually needs its own design model to be more efficient. And we're not talking about like a little bit faster. We're talking about a 10x change. So Grok is about 10 times faster than other models. Even some of the faster models, Grok is lightning fast. And I think that they're designing a new supercomputer to beat their previous record. But basically, utilizing Grok, we're getting to the point where latency is so low that you can actually use LLMs, especially if you did it locally. I couldn't imagine. I haven't done that yet, but I have done it in the cloud, and it's still pretty quick. But you can get down the latency to very low speeds, so low, in fact, that humans won't even notice that it's a computer. And that's in the 0.15 to 0.35 or so second delay. Anything in that range, and humans have difficulties distinguishing that it is not happening real time. And you can have LLMs communicate with you via voice in real time. That happens today, now. And that's only going to change as LLMs get stronger, as LLMs get quicker, as edge processing becomes more and more realistic, where people are having LPUs or NPUs directly on board their main systems. All of that will change in terms of latency, in terms of speed. And once the latency goes down enough, once it becomes correct enough, once it becomes, secure enough, then a lot more people will start using it or having it. It'll just be something that just comes with new computers, basically, just like GPUs. And yeah, then the world will certainly change. It's already very different, right? I think everyone has kind of been affected by it in some way or fashion, especially when you start to talk about instruction. I had so many students coming through my classes that were all talking about, when are we going to learn about AI and LLMs? The answer was like never, right? Because we were talking about cybersecurity. It's really just a tool. The way that I look at it is LLMs are just a tool. It's not going to replace me. And we're going to talk about that again with this tool today. We're going to talk about pros, but we're also going to talk about some cons, right? We're going to be very realistic about where the product is and, where it's currently at in its life cycle. And I can tell you it's at the very beginning of that process, okay? Because LLMs have a fundamental propensity to be wrong. Like humans are wrong often. LLMs are wrong most of the time. I know that sounds a little bit negative, but it is a fact, right? You can even try to ask it some questions. I mean, things like ChatGPT and the like. If you ask it a really specific question, it gets worse and worse at answering it. The less and less knowledge it has based off the idea. So like if you were trying to get a lot of different opinions, let's say that you wanted an opinion of like a doctor and like a carpenter and like a, I don't know, um, uh, like a scientist, like a microbiologist or something, right? And so you had a few different trades and you're like, look, I want information from you, you, and you. That would be hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of training, decades of experience, right, for humans. And it would be very expensive just to ask those people a question, especially if you wanted a question answered from each of them within any reasonable amount of time, right? LLMs are really good at cutting through that nonsense and getting to the answers without requiring the humans or the time commitment, right? And that's really, really good. There are a lot of benefits that come with LLMs, but again, we'll talk about some of the negatives as well when we get to that. All right. So first things first, what is Microsoft Security Copilot? Um, Microsoft Security Copilot is an LLM that is hosted in Azure on its own platform. And what it does is it gives the capability of users who are in Azure, it gives them the capability to interact with their data sets in real time through an LLM. So if you use something like ChatGPT and you ask it some questions, I guess this might move into how does it compare to other LLMs. If you ask ChatGPT, um, hey, can you look at my environment and determine, the top 10, recent attacks against my environment? That is not something that ChatGPT could do, right? Because it doesn't have access to your environment. I think that's kind of the biggest thing here is that the the design, the capability of Microsoft Security Copilot rests on its ability to interact with your environment fundamentally. So without that, none of the other LLMs are really comparable. Now, if you designed your own SIEM SOC, right, and you were uploading a bunch of logs, and then you had an LLM that was able to read those logs and then spit out results, that might be comparable. But I don't know of any tools like that. So I think that Microsoft Security Copilot is one of the first in its kind of in its area. Um, its capability of reading that information from your environment directly, I think, is really paramount to its success. And it is, in my opinion, that is its purpose. It is designed to be a Copilot-like LLM, but specifically for your security uh, posture, your cybersecurity posture, and all the information coming from Microsoft Defender and the like. Things like IOCs and threat intelligence and things like that are what Microsoft Security Copilot has access to directly. Okay, so that's kind of the purpose. That's the design. That's the model. That's why it was created. Was because it's designed really to allow SOC analysts to do work at the helm just by asking an LLM some questions. Right? You could even say that, well, this could even be used by someone who is less technical than a SOC analyst. Again, we'll talk about what's really possible when we look at some of the output coming from Security Copilot here in a bit. We are going to do a live demonstration to kind of show it off a little bit. But this is how we will get to a better understanding of what can this actually do, who is this actually for, and should my organization be utilizing it. Okay, so we're going to talk about a couple things here. This slide is really just a conversation about how to begin, right? Like if nobody has really used 365 before, this is kind of where I start out. This is where I begin, if you will. And what I mean by that is this is how you get access to the 365 portal. You can either use portal.office.com or Microsoft365.com. I think this is the newest name for it, but this old name still redirects to the location. That'll get you to all of the applications, the 365 apps, Word, PowerPoint, things like that, all the stuff that you guys are used to, email, Outlook. And then from there, you'll have access to, once you log in to the portal and implement MFA and all that, you'll then have access to Microsoft Azure, and you can hit that from portal.azure.com. Some of the things that we'll be talking about today are going to happen in portal.azure.com. So it's important to understand that this exists. And then Microsoft Defender is located at security.microsoft.com, and that's how you get access to XDR and all of the SIEM related tools. Okay. So that is kind of how this is where I begin from like a SOC analyst perspective. If you're talking about 365, how do I interact with it? This is how. Okay, so hopefully you probably already know this if you've interacted with any of these tools before, or even have a 365 account. But just be aware that this is how this is what I recommend to get started. Okay, that's not even talking about Security Copilot. Now we're actually going to get into Security Copilot itself. Security Copilot does have its own portal. There is a location in Azure. You can search for it, and again, I'll show all this when I go through the live demo. But there is a location called portal.azure.com, and it has its own link, kind of like if you click on like Enter ID or anything like that. Any of those solutions will have its own module, its own portal. I think they're called. I forget the name of that. Something like Dex. I'll see if I can remember that name. But each of these, where it has after where it says browse, the Microsoft Security Copilot capacities and all that, those all have a name in Microsoft, and each one is kind of its own service. They're kind of like, you could call them microservices, but they're all hosted in Azure. All right, blades, that's what they're called. So each of these are like a blade within Azure, and each blade has its own design, right? Its own microservice that it's hosting. So you can find that in Azure at that link. But Microsoft Security Copilot itself has its own portal called securitycopilot.microsoft.com. So the Defender portal is security.microsoft.com. Security Copilot is securitycopilot.microsoft.com. So there are a lot of portals to keep track of here. Okay. It's not easy even for me, but again, the first thing that I do is make sure that I know where I can even go. You got to start with what you can even do, what you're allowed to do, and then you can kind of go from there, right? So in terms of setting this up, in terms of setting up and configuring Microsoft Copilot, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to create the instance, the compute instance in Azure. This is very similar to Sentinel, setting up compute for your notebooks and the like. Is very similar to this. You actually have to tell Azure like, hey, I need compute resources, and you might just say like, well, shouldn't they be, just giving you compute as needed, right? Because this is basically a serverless um, application. It's not virtualized, it's not containerized, it's not physical, so it has to be serverless. Which means that that all you're doing is sending data to an application, to an endpoint, and then it is handling that data and then giving you a response, kind of like an API, right? But the way they do this is they charge you for that, right? And it's not just like a little bit. I actually had, and we'll talk about monies here in a second, but I had some difficulties just kind of understanding the costs because it doesn't seem to be that straightforward. Okay, we'll talk about that here momentarily. So once you create the compute instance in Azure, you then go to the Security Copilot portal where it asks you a bunch of questions. Again, during the compute creation, you have a bunch of questions about where the compute's going to be stored, whether or not you want to allow compute um, to cross zones, right? Going from US East to US West, for instance. There may be compliance reasons for things like that you have to say, no, we can only do it in US West. But once the compute is created, then you actually go to the Security Copilot portal and you say, I want to use this capacity that I just created. It'll have a name. It'll show up in the dropdown after you reload the page. And again, the whole point of this Security Copilot tool is to be able to ask questions to it and for it to be able to give a response, so that you as a security analyst or SOC analyst can actually look at information kind of like on the fly through a language model. And again, the whole point of this, guys, everybody, is to understand data, to be able to manipulate and understand and digest or ingest data with language. Right? Because normally, how do we do things like this? Real world, you are normally going to be either using a relational database language, something like MySQL or Microsoft SQL or NoSQL or Postgres or something like that, or using a flat database language, something like KQL or Splunk query language. There are a few of them out there, but basically you're not writing in English, right? You're writing in some other language, some database query language that is not necessarily going to be easy to understand, right? It's not super complicated, but it's also not something that you can just pick up without any training, right? You would obviously have to get trained in this. But do you have to get trained in Microsoft Security Copilot prompts and things like that? Also, yes, but not in the same way because, of course, it's in English. So it makes it easier for people to understand because you don't have to learn a new language, right? So that's great. That helps, blue teamers interact with their SIEM and their EDR and their IOCs and their threat intelligence, their TI information. All of that becomes prominent and becomes interactable with Security Copilot. And I think that's the biggest draw is that you can import all this information and say, hey, Security Copilot, can you just go ingest and understand all this information for me? I'm kind of busy, right? Like, hey, go do the work for me. And that's basically what it does, right? And again, we'll see that live to give a demonstration of what its capabilities truly are today, just so that we're all clear. Again, working directly with Microsoft here through Netcom. Again, we work with Microsoft, but we also like to be realistic and talk about, again, how good the tool is, but also where some of its deficiencies are, right? Every tool has its deficiencies. There are no tools that are perfect. So we'll just be going through all that just so that you guys have a better understanding of what, the tool is capable of today. On October 10th, 2024. This is 100% going to change, by the way. This is one of those products that is moving so quickly that by the time that this is really set in stone of what it's capable of, what we're talking about today will be of almost no use to you. I can imagine the tool changing quite a bit, its capabilities improving, its potential improving, a lot of the negatives and the failures that it can have going away and being kind of handled a little bit better. But again, we'll talk all about all that when we get to the live demo. Last point here, Security Copilot includes almost any source that you can really think of on the threat intelligence side. It has many data connectors, very similar to Sentinel. If you've seen Sentinel and the way that it handles data connectors for all of your favorite vendors, that's kind of exactly how Security Copilot works, but for threat intelligence feeds. Of course, you probably need to pay for some of those. Some of those TI feeds are not free, but the ones that are, you just have to configure, set up, and then it's ready to go. All right. So that's pretty cool. Again, a lot of those feeds you have to kind of design and you have to like develop a way to interact with it and being able to pull information from it, and because a lot of that's just an API request that you could then pull down and manipulate as you see fit. But here again, everything is kind of through this LLM, which makes it much easier for people to interact with less training required. Okay. Now, let's talk about some of the negatives here. The cost for Security Copilot is high. Okay. I don't even know what the cost is because the breakdown is not obvious. Okay. What they've done, what Microsoft has decided to do, is essentially create this new SKU, or sorry, this new SCU, Security Compute Units, which are basically, again, for serverless architecture. This is a really easy way for you to sell that capability. But what happens is it is difficult. It is difficult to understand cost. So Microsoft recommends provisioning 3 SCUs per hour to start your Copilot for security experience. So they're saying that you need to spend basically $12 an hour to utilize Security Copilot. Now, does that mean that it will cover all of your requests every hour? No. I was only using a single compute unit because I was like just doing some testing, right? Why throw a bunch of money at it when I can just throw a little bit at it and see what happens? And about, 15, 20 minutes into my adventure, I was getting failures that I had already reached my maximum. So that is kind of why they say that you need more than one. Okay, but again, because this is a serverless design, it is very difficult for us to track down and line item exactly why it costs this much money or why you've already utilized all that processing. There will be some scenarios that we'll probably see in the live demonstration that will be a little bit confusing in terms of like why is it doing that. And honestly, I don't know the answer, and I don't think that I'm going to be able to get the answer anytime soon. I don't think anyone really knows. Even on the Microsoft side, I don't know if Microsoft would be able to tell you why this or that happened with LLMs, right? One thing that, again, just to go back to the LLM conversation in general, LLMs are a black box. It is very difficult to understand what the LLM is actually, first of all, capable of, but second of all, what it's even doing, right? One of the major problems it has is like, because it looks at everything, its entire data set, it doesn't necessarily understand what portion of the data set data came from. So this is where LLMs can run into problems. Some of these problems are known as like hallucinations, because what it does is it sees information that isn't really there, or whenever it goes to ingest it, it doesn't really understand like the context, and that can be very confusing because the output really is not correct. So if Microsoft Security Copilot goes through a hallucination phase or some failure phase, some failure to recognize or deal with or handle like an error or something like that, which it will error out. Again, we'll see that live. It's difficult to understand if any of that affects any of this. It's just not obvious. It's not readily accessible or knowable. And that's confusing, right? Because a single SCU is $3,000 a month. And this will get you about 15 minutes or 20 minutes of time with the product every hour. So again, that's confusing, right? I was initially told by somebody who had already talked about this, who had already done some training on this, and they told me, right? I was reaching out to my resources for this masterclass. They told me it's $4 per hour. That's not true. It actually has nothing to do with per hour. I have it on here because it is kind of related to time, but it's not related to time at all. It's more of like a, a generally related to time because going through and asking a bunch of questions and it responding and things like that can actually take quite a bit of effort, and utilizes some of that SCU provisioning, right? Because again, we're not talking about like time, we're talking about capacity for compute. Serverless capacity is, again, harder to nail down on exactly what that is. All right. So again, just be aware that this part is a little bit confusing. It's similar with Microsoft Copilot as well. Remember that there are two products here, not just Microsoft Security Copilot, but also Microsoft Copilot, which is really designed to help you in Word, PowerPoint, and things like that. It has a very similar compute unit sales aspect to it, and it is also confusing to understand. Okay, so we're going to talk about a couple things to look out for with the product. Again, these are more general purpose, like you're administrating the tool rather than actually using it. But you cannot, once you've already configured the security compute unit, you cannot turn that to 0. You cannot say, I want to just pause you for a second by turning off the compute units that are allocated for this. You cannot do that. So at this moment in time, I don't know if it's actually possible to pause the compute. And you're paying for it regardless of whether or not you use it. All right. Yeah. So you need to, one of the major things that you need to be aware of is that it does not, you need to turn it off basically. Right. And we'll talk about that. I think that's the next slide over. Another thing is that if you do turn off the SCUs, if you like delete the instance, the compute instance, it does not work anymore. You can go to the portal, but it just will stop responding. It doesn't give you an error or anything like that at all. It just does nothing. And you guys see that with my GIF that I posted on this slide. This is me trying to make it do something while the SCUs are not allocated, and you can see that it just does nothing. Whenever you start utilizing your SEUs and start asking it questions, eventually you might get a response like this. Due to your organization's high usage, Copilot cannot respond to requests. Contact a security admin to increase the allowed usage. So the SEUs are very important. Don't have SEUs, you cannot make more requests. And so again, in my mind, I'm like, okay, so unless you allocate enough resources, your SOC analyst will run into these problems, and then if they get kicked out of it, then your SOC analyst may start to say, well, why would I use this tool? So I do think it's important to understand how the SCUs work, because you need to be able to allocate enough for your cybersecurity team to utilize without without breaking the bank. Um, and the reason for that is, like, if your SOC analysts are running into this type of problem pretty consistently, that's a really big issue. This did not make it easier to use the product. Let's just say that. Okay. From a technical perspective, if my technical team came back to me and said, we're not interested in using this tool because it just is constantly unavailable to us because of high usage, that's not good, right? That's a bad experience, and it will turn people away from the tool. So if you're really wanting your SOC analyst to accept the tool and test it and utilize it, then you need to make sure that you provide enough SEUs for your entire organization, not just a single person, but everybody. So I think Microsoft was saying, 3 SEUs, so $12 an hour to get started, but I think that was just for a single person, because you can have multiple people interacting with that tool. You need more than just that, right? For a team. Yeah, and when you are done with the instance, you need to delete it. And what I mean by that is you need to delete it. I mean, long term, I think there could be some really good reasons for keeping the instance around for tracking purposes. But from a monetary perspective, the only thing that I found that made any sense was deleting the instance entirely, right? Because I'm not interested in getting charged $3,000 a month for accidentally leaving this service on. So again, a big part of this tool, and really any tool in the cloud, if you're talking about cloud services, one of the major points of that service is financial. You need to be on top of the financial side of these tools. Otherwise, it will charge you an arm and a leg. Okay. Again, I've seen people with uh with um I've seen people with invoices from AWS and Azure and the like exceeding $1 million a month. And I'm just like, with an ROI of, like, I don't know, a year and a half, you could design probably your own colo that could easily, in terms of efficiency and performance, could easily beat, what's available to you in the cloud. And that's not just Microsoft Security Copilot, that it's everything. So whenever you talk about monies in the cloud, it's almost always, without a doubt, it is always more expensive than on-prem. The benefits often do outweigh the downsides because performance is not always like front and center, top of mind, right? Like think again, the Security Copilot, the requirement for this tool is not for it to be high performance. That's not the point, right? It doesn't necessarily even need to be high performance. It needs to be available, right? And that's what serverless compute is really good at, is making it available, but not necessarily high performance. All LLMs right now are serverless tools. Serverless compute means there is no device that you're interacting with. You're not RDPing into a physical machine. You're not VNCing into a VM. You're not SSHing into a container. You're sending a request to a service that is hosted on a website, and then you get a response, and that's the entire service. So from that perspective, you need to make sure that the financials are that you're on top of the financials, because otherwise they can really start to overcharge you. Okay, now with Security Copilot, you have a lot of sources as options. Again, very similar to the way the Sentinel works with its data connectors. The sources are things like Azure Firewall, Defender, Sentinel, Entra, right? Intune, Purview. These are all options, of course, but those are all the Microsoft options. There's a whole slew of non-Microsoft sources that include things like your favorite threat intelligence feeds. Again, if you're interested in this, go ahead and go take a look at learn.microsoft.com. There is some really good information that covers some of the plugins that are already available, or you can just go into Microsoft Security Copilot to look for yourself. But the idea is that if you want Copilot to look at pieces of information from other aspects of cybersecurity, you can, but you need to give it that access. And of course, that is going to cost money, right? Every time that you set up a data connector or include a source for your tool, it is a new data set. It is a new set of information that needs to be queried, and thus it costs you more money. So you can think about basically each of these includes a different source, and that source, additional source, includes additional requirements for compute, which means that that will eat into your SCU. So the more things that you have turned on here, the less SCU you will have available in total, right? Does that make sense? So like as you include more data sets, you are reducing your overall potential because it has to search through all the information, and that takes time, effort, compute. That's what they're charging you for, right? Whenever things like that happen, like with ChatGPT, what happens is like you get that free model. If anyone's been using ChatGPT lately, you get that free model, and the free model is like, oh yeah, here's your a few requests that you're allowed to do today, and then we're going to downgrade you to one of the older models. If you pay for it, that handles that for you. You don't have to pay for it or anything like that. You don't have to worry about compute being a problem. But here, basically, you're paying for it, and you can still hit your limit. So it's kind of a different way to sell it than the way that OpenAI was doing it. Again, I think that these are kind of my own opinions, but I do think that local LLMs are going to become more popular because of this compute issue. I think that even Microsoft and other organizations are starting to understand that this takes a lot of money. And there's that whole thing with like every query to ChatGPT costs like 1.4 liters of water or something like that. The reason why all that happens, the reason why you can make those calculations is because these data centers, these colos require a bunch of resources to keep up and running. Again, coming back to financials, that's why Microsoft feels like they are allowed to charge this type of money. Now, whether or not that's going to work out for them is a whole other story. Whether or not this is really going to become a product that becomes, a central point of their delivery model. But overall, it is something that is new in the space and is unique in the space. Again, because a local LLM would be awesome, but would it have access to everything a Defender? No, right? Um, could it have access to everything in a SIEM that you host on-prem? Potentially. So I think that if you use a local LLM, your design, your model for your SIEM would just have to be completely different. If you're in the cloud and you want a virtual SOC and you want all of your people to be able to interact with that information from anywhere in the world in a secure fashion, and you also want an LLM that can interact with all that data, Security Copilot's kind of the only tool in town. All right, now let's talk about prompt engineering. Okay, if you haven't heard about prompt engineering, it's a great name. It's a really interesting idea. But prompt engineering is basically the methodology through which you create prompts. And a prompt is basically the thing that you type into the form. So if you've ever used an LLM, you have already done some form of prompt engineering. But with Security Copilot, it's a little bit different. Not only can you create prompts from scratch, but there are also these prompt books that they give you access to, which are essentially multiple prompts in a row. So similar to like a playbook in Sentinel, where it allows you to run like multiple Python queries to do something with data and then to make a change with the data, etc. That's kind of what a prompt book allows you to do too. So you give it one piece of information, and then it uses that information to give you specific subsets of output, right, in different ways. So like this CVE one says, summarize the CVE in a short narrative. If this vulnerability is a remote code execution, if it impacts a device on the internet, finally include a bullet point list of impacted technology for easy reference. So that's like the first prompt. The second prompt is for identifying any threat intelligence articles or threat actors associated with the CVID. So if you have additional, threat intelligence, capabilities already set up and designed with your Security Copilot via the source aggregation, then you can just go in here and request that information. It will pull information from that data set. So this prompt engineering is very interesting. These prompt books are very interesting because people have already thought about how to design these prompts. So really, all you got to do is use the prompts and then give it information that has to do with whatever it is that you're looking into. So like a CVE, maybe a specific threat, right? A specific threat ID. Those are all possible with these prompt books. You don't really have to even think about it. You can create your own prompts from scratch, but it's much easier to just use the prompts that come with the tool already. All right. All right, guys, let's take a quick 5-minute break, and then I'll start on the remaining topics after we return.
Thank you so much, Logan. Hello, everyone. I am Sagnik, and I'm the product marketing manager here at Netcom Learning, handling Microsoft. And that just take a couple of minutes before we head over for the break. So I hope my screen is visible. Great. So I'll take everyone through the badge redemption part because for all the participants today, we have provided you with the free access to the Microsoft official courseware on SC 5006, which is Get Started with Microsoft Copilot for Security, a topic which closely aligns with today's course, which today's masterclass that we are part of. And that's not it. You're also going to get digital achievement trophies and badges issued from Microsoft to celebrate your learning accomplishments today. And the redemption part is very simple. I'm going to quickly show everyone how to go ahead with that. And I'd like to request everyone to follow along with me so we can get it over with and then quickly go into our break. So first of all, I'd like to request everyone to please refer to your GoToWebinar chat window. You'd find the link to this particular landing page. It would be shared on your chat. So please open that link on your browser on your end, and please try to follow along with me. So I just wait for 30 seconds or so everyone can find that link and get ready. just an FYI, you're also going to find this link available as part of your event handout shared later today. But I'd really encourage that everyone participates in this redemption right now, so you can be rest assured that you have gotten all your benefits unlocked. Okay, so I'm hoping most of us would have already gotten to this page. Now, as the page suggests, that there are 3 simple steps to redeem your courseware and badges, right? And the very first step of doing that is making sure that you are signed into your Microsoft Learn account. Now, if you already have an account on Microsoft Learn and you're already signed in, then it becomes super easy for you. It would barely take around 30 seconds of your time. If you don't have an existing account, you can create one very easily, and it's going to just take another 2 minutes of your time. So once you click on this link, get started under step 1 here, you'll be redirected to Microsoft Learn. If you already have an existing Microsoft Learn account, please use those credentials to sign in. If you don't have an account, there is an option called Create One at the bottom, as highlighted here in red. Just simply click on that, use one of your existing valid IDs to create and set up your Microsoft Learn account. And once you sign in, you will be looking at this step 2 of the redemption process. Now, this step is super easy. It's going to show a dialog on your screen once you're signed in, and it's going to come with a pre-populated code as shown here, right? So you don't have to type in any code manually. It's going to be automatically fetched. So from this link that you have started with, right? So once you click on get started, you'd be signed in. If you're not having an account, you'd create one, and again, you'd be automatically redirected to this dialog saying redeem your code. All you need to do in this particular step is just click on this redeem button that has been highlighted in red. Once you click on that, it's going to process for a couple of seconds. And then you're going to see a prompt like this, that we have added your achievement to your profile. Now, once you click on view profile, you can access all your official courseware modules from the training tab. And if you go to the achievements portion, you would be able to find all your badges and your trophies added there. Now, be proud of your achievements and celebrate it by sharing your digital trophy on your LinkedIn profile. And don't forget to tag Netcom Learning and Microsoft on your posts for maximum visibility and reach. So these are the 3 simple steps. You start with this link, you log in, or you create your account. You're going to see this dialog once the setup has been done. You just need to click on redeem, and then you're going to see this prompt implying that you have successfully redeemed your achievement at Microsoft, and you have been given digital achievement trophies and badges along with the full courseware of SC5006 Get Started with Copilot for Security. With that, I'd like to leave everyone for the break, but please make sure to complete this process and let us know in the chat if you face any issues, and we'd be more than happy to help you with that. Thank you, everyone.
Sure, we are now going to take a 5-minute break, but before we do that, we are going to launch a quick poll that we want to invite you to participate in. Doing so helps us know how we can better serve you by telling us who might be interested in more information or in taking some additional training. In addition, we have a lot more informative webinars coming up, so please go to netcomlearning.com/webinars in order to register.
Welcome back, everyone. Let's continue where we left off. All right. So we're going to talk about advanced AI capabilities in Security Copilot. Of course, you can see this is me creating a prompt book from scratch. You can see the plugins. Of course, you can add in some plugins there. You can tag it to track. Maybe this is I don't know, basics, or like beginning of the day. Maybe you have some prompt books that run at the beginning of every single day, and so you tag them with, like, I don't know, operations or whatever. And so as you sit down at your desk every day, you can run a playbook to Security Copilot and say, hey, give me some information, and then I want you to do something with that information, so that whenever I get back to my desk, because this is not instant, it's going to take some time to process. Once I get back to my desk, I'll be able to have information at my fingertips to help me understand what to do, right? It's more like a guide, right? I can create my own prompt books. I can import data from my favorite security tools, whatever sources I want in terms of threat feeds and things like that. It helps me interact with all my data inside of Azure and Defender and things like that. For my technicians, for me, my team, as well as even potentially my MSSP. It also supports that. If I have an MSSP, I can actually host Security Copilot and then give my MSSP access to Security Copilot, which is kind of cool. And of course, it helps with a lot of automation and support for your tier 1 and tier 2 SOC analysts. Again, you're kind of your beginner level analysts. I think that your higher level analysts would be the ones actually creating the prompt books and designing, some of the things that that the prompt books could help you do. But they would kind of be more on the back end, more like if you were using Sentinel and you had like a tier 3 SOC analyst writing out Python Jupyter notebooks for automated remediation. That would kind of be like beyond, like, I don't think the Security Copilot can really do all of those things quite yet. And so this is really designed for your junior and your standard SOC analyst rather than your senior SOC analyst. Senior SOC analysts are probably not going to be the design for these prompt books in this tool. Okay, I really think that this is more designed to help guide and train your junior SOC analysts, your tier 1, tier 2 SOC analysts. I think that's really what its purpose is actually going to be, at least for now, right? Its capabilities are probably going to increase in the future. So again, we'll see how what Microsoft does with this tool moving forward. Some other cool things that it does, of course, you can create your own plugins. These can be Microsoft or OpenAI plugins, and it supports either YAML or JSON, which is super easy for those of you who have used it before. Very simple way to design things. It's like code, but not really. It's more like just a way to store data. It's more like just a data structure is what it is. So if you want to provide information to a tool, you can easily let that tool import JSON or YAML, and then anyone that wants to provide any level of data to that tool that it can easily parse just needs to provide that data in a YAML or JSON file, and then it'll be able to read it. And that's what it's basically asking for here. It is kind of funny that there's no like LLM that allows you to create a plugin on the fly with a large language model rather than having to write out the YAML or JSON. I would love to see that type of stuff in the future. So that, again, I would love to be able to step over the requirement to have to learn some of these more technical things, even though YAML and JSON is supposed to be easier. What's easier than YAML or JSON? English. So if I could ask, the tool itself to create a plugin on the fly, that would be awesome. We can even try that during the live demonstration. We'll see if it's possible to do that. I don't think it'll be capable of that though. Not yet, at least. So some of the more open-ended, this is just like what it's potentially capable of. These are the high-level things that we would really hope for as a SOC analyst interacting with this tool. At some point, we would love to be able to see these types of things where Security Copilot can utilize that big data from Microsoft platform to categorize and sort data quickly, right? So that we could be more efficient, so that I can ask a question, I can then get the answer and then make an educated decision with that data, right? Instead of having to be super technical, I want to be able to do that with language, with English, right? Or with whatever language that you're using the LLM with. Um, so can be used on the same platform as Defender, right? Of course, it can already utilize Defender and Defender XDR and Sentinel and other threat intelligence feeds to help you utilize real TCPs, right? If you're trying to understand how an attack happens, you know, TTPs, your techniques, tactics, and procedures of the attackers, they are going to be the ones that that is the most relevant information, right? If I'm trying to secure my organization, I need to know how attackers operate. And if I understand that information and I can pull that from a data set and categorize the information with an LLM, that is just going to be easier than having to do that with something like KQL in Defender, right? KQL in Defender again is a flat database language, and that is going to be, you know, a technical thing that you have to learn how to do. It's not just like, oh, I just know how to do it now. There are, you know, now we should have an LLM with Security Copilot that should help us be able to create those queries. Okay, so let's talk about some practical applications for this tool, as well as some use cases. And again, this will be pretty basic because we've kind of already covered this. But again, I think a lot of this time that we use for this masterclass will actually be using the tool because it is a little bit complicated. And a lot of it is, if anyone's ever used an OpenAI or an LLM in any way, like ChatGPT or the like, again, it's kind of open-ended. It's very much a black box. So we'll see that during the live demo. So some of the things you could obviously use this tool for, right, is helping your SOC analyst perform daily operations, tracking of cases, active threats against the organization. One thing you could do again is have like a prompt book that basically is a beginning of the day type of request, saying, hey, who's been attacking us? Who are the latest top 10 IP addresses attacking my organization? Can I basically block all of those IP addresses? That would be fantastic. If it's capable of doing something like that, that would be next level. Okay. Again, we'll test some of that when we actually get to using the tool. Helping train or guide tier 1 SOC analysts in determining if an attack is a false positive. So whenever you have an incident or a threat in Defender, you can go take a look at it and try to determine if it's a false positive yourself. But what if you don't really know any of that, right? What if you're still new? The LLM could help you understand what is and what isn't a false positive, right? So being able to basically have that guide, have that coach right there with you, being able to help you understand what information is true and what isn't, what is a problem, what isn't a problem, you know, what's malicious and what isn't malicious. That's the type of stuff that, in my opinion, is going to really elevate your SOC and your tier 1 SOC analyst. Your tier 2, tier 3 SOC analysts may already understand the query languages, and so that they don't really need these tools because they're, in many ways, they're just going to slow them down. They already have a process for understanding information. They already have a procedure for creating KQL queries or Splunk query language queries, you know, to look for attacks. And so if they're already doing all that, you know, this tool is really designed to help people do that type of work. But if they can already do all that type of work just from their head, you know, this type of tool I don't think is going to add a whole lot of extra value to that process for your senior SOC analysts. Again, we'll see what its capabilities truly are here in a bit, but as far as I understand, some of the more advanced stuff, like being able to create a playbook on the fly in Sentinel, I think is a little bit more than what it's really capable of doing for the time being. Okay. Again, this is just as of October 10th, 2024. This type of stuff changes literally daily. If they wanted to change something on the back end of a serverless compute infrastructure, that you would never know. You would never know, because that's how serverless works, right? If anyone doesn't really understand serverless is essentially a cluster of containers, and those containers can be replaced at whim, by the developer. So if they have a new design, they create a new container with that new design. They can push the new container as the image to the cluster, and then the cluster manager will slowly replace all the containers with the new container image, and thus new properties, new design, new application is pushed out. And that's all that it takes. You don't have to update anything on your side, right? Serverless applications are not, you don't have any access to the back end at all. It is a front end. It's like a web application, but it's doing a whole lot more than that, right? It's not just a database. It's like a database and algorithms and compute and all that type of stuff running on the back end, along with the cluster manager. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a little bit of insight there. So helping automate or support tier 2 SOC analyst SOC workflow. This is just like understanding how operations works with SOC 2 analysts, like understanding what needs to be done in what order, what things matter. That's kind of what workflow is all about, right? Workflow is not really anything specific. It's just, what do you do day in and day out? What does your operation look like? How do you stop threats? Right, and being able to help automate or support that workflow, I think, is really where this tool is going to find its niche. That, and along with tier 1 SOC analysts, like helping them learn on the basics, I think is going to be where Microsoft Security Copilot really starts to shine. Okay. Again, some obvious things that it could help out with, but maybe this is more in the future. Vulnerability management, threat hunting, phishing engagement automation, threat intelligence gathering on current cyber threats. I think this one might be possible right now if you give it the proper threat intelligence feeds, if you configure all that information. But things like threat hunting, I think, is still a little bit wonky. Again, threat hunting is like the process of going through and trying to find a real world threat in your organization now, right? Like today. Um, and that's a threat that has already gotten past all of your other cybersecurity controls. So that is not necessarily going to be easy, not easy at all. Okay, so I don't know how good Copilot's actually going to be at that right now today. We'll ask you some threat hunting questions here in a bit. Vulnerability management, again, I think that it'll be able to pull some information, but managing it over a long period of time, I don't think is really what it's designed to do. Phishing engagement automation, I think that it can help you understand phishing, but I don't know if it can truly configure full-blown social engineering campaigns yet for your organization, which is kind of like what I would want to see if I was, getting access to a phishing engagement automation tool. I would want it to be very bare bones. At a minimum, being able to take what I have, right, and say, like, okay, well, I want it to be an attack against HR, and I want it to pretend to be like, I don't know, some time off, like a raffle for time off from my organization, and the only thing they have to do is to log into their account to make sure that they're who they say they are, so that when they win, we can send them the free time off or whatever, and then they give me their credentials, and then they just got owned. So I don't know if a phishing engagement automation campaign like that can be done by Security Copilot yet. But again, this is what I would love to see in the future, right? You can already do that in Defender, so why can't Security Copilot just interact with Defender and all the APIs and stuff like that on its own? So this one might be the only one that it can truly do right now. It is actually pretty good at gathering threat intelligence information on live, like real world attacks. All right, we'll take a look at that here in a bit. Okay. This is something that I asked it to do just to try to help you understand like what it is capable of, and it's able to look at some phishing emails. But again, what I found was that all these emails were not phishing necessarily, but they had been tagged by Defender. That's actually how it determines all this in the first place. It had been tagged by Defender with a with basically like some alert mechanism, and that's all that it did is it looked at all of my emails and said, which of those have that mechanism, right? And that one there at the bottom, I don't think that these were real, but I do think that this one at the bottom was a real phishing email. Microsoft 365 avoid service interruption, update recall service. I don't think this was a real email. I think that was a phishing email. And so again, this is something that it is okay at, but again, is not necessarily perfect at. And that's because, Defender is not perfect at it either. That's where it gets all its information from. All right. So real quick, before we get into that, before we get into the last little bit here to kind of wrap up for Netcom, I do want to go over a live demonstration of the tool, because again, I do think that you guys are, I think it's important to understand how this works, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to portal.azure.com after logging in and everything, just like we talked about at the beginning of this masterclass, and we're going to search for Microsoft Security Copilot, Microsoft Copilot for security compute capacities, okay? And this is basically where we're going to create that capacity from scratch. So we're going to create this, we're going to click on this little button here in the middle, and we're just going to choose the subscription. We're going to choose a resource group for tracking purposes. And in terms of capacity name, we're just going to do Copilot test. Prompt evaluation, I only want it to happen in the United States, right? You can do it wherever you want if possible. But again, for compliance reasons, they can actually force it to only happen in certain locations. And then for now, I think for the US East is the only one that's really onboarded at the moment for Security Copilot. We're only going to do one SCU at the moment. We're not going to do the recommended 3 SCU that Microsoft told us to do, but that's just because I want to show you when it starts to fail, and that will happen during this presentation. Okay, I almost guarantee it. It won't take us that long to get to that step. Okay, so we just create it. It's very easy. Let's see how simple that is. Once it is deployed, we're going to move over to Microsoft Security Copilot, and we're going to make sure that it is synced with our compute units. Okay, so we're going to refresh Security Copilot. You can see, just like in the slide deck, as soon as you have something, and by the way, I've tried to create it through Copilot and it didn't work. I don't know why, but I was getting errors. Once I created it through Azure, worked like a charm. Okay, so create through Azure, go to Security Copilot, select your new SCU, apply. Okay, and now you're all set. And now basically, now we're ready to go. Now, so Security Copilot is here at the bottom, but you can see that it has all these other things too. You can have like your previous sessions. It has prompt books here at the bottom, but we're just going to click down here, and we're going to start with looking at the sources, okay? Now, I've kind of turned off some of these, but I've left a few of them on, right? And you can see how some of these are already, configured by default. And then you can also see some of the non-Microsoft sources that are available to you. Things like Abuse, Shodan, CyberArk, CrowdSec, Darktrace, Forescout, Gray Noise, Intel 471, Red Canary, Savient, Tanium, some things I haven't heard of before, URL Scan, right? So these are all public web, right? These are all, and then of course you can create your own custom plugin down here, which is awesome. These are all really additional things that you can add but you can also upload files, right? And Copilot can even use them as reference information. Kind of cool, but you can only upload 20 megs, of course. Not sure exactly how that would be used real world, but that is kind of interesting. Now, after the sources, we're going to go to the prompts, and this is basically your prompt book. So what's pretty cool about this is that, like, from a system capability perspective, you can have it like analyze scripts, you can have it extract information from IOCs, summarize data, generate security examples. You can enrich incidents. So enrich incident investigation with file context from Defender, find user IP or host name, analyze a file, generate an incident report, ask for Microsoft documentation, right? Microsoft Entra, pulling information about like logs and things like that. So it is pretty interesting how many things it's capable of, which is pretty cool. So see like Microsoft Sentinel. Okay, but see that one, let's see if is there a Sentinel location here? Microsoft Threat Intelligence. So that would be actually pretty cool. But what we'll do here instead of doing individual system capability prompts, we're going to look at the prompt books, all right? And again, these are going to be, this is going to be live. So just be aware that some of this may not work, all right? Just a heads up on that. So we'll do vulnerability impact assessment. I think this will be a good one. Yep. And basically we're going to give it a CVE, okay? So let's go ahead and look for some CVEs. I used to have this great website that was based off of Twitter, and it covered all the latest CVEs that were being discussed online. But ever since the change to the Twitter API, that's no longer available. So let's go to total CVE record. We should just be able to say 2024. I think this is also different too. Keyword, so just 2024. We just want some CVEs that were from like the latest, maybe SQL. This is a website, so it's a database. It's querying right now, so just be aware of that. That's why it's going to take a second. They used to be able to search just by year, and I think they got rid of that because it just gave like too much output or something like that. But you can see some of these, it'll do it by latest. So these are all having to do with SQL injection in 2024, and you can see there are a lot of vulnerabilities. But let's take a look at something, maybe a WordPress login, okay? Let's do that one. This one might actually be being used real world. Let's see. Okay, so let's just take the CVE ID, which is gonna be right here. Okay, so we'll take this and we're gonna throw this into this prompt book, and basically Security Copilot is gonna take this, take that CVE number and do all these different things. Summarize with a short narrative, identify any threat intelligence articles or threat actors associated, what mitigations can I put in place to defend against this, and then write me an executive summary covering this vulnerability for someone who is less technical. And of course, you can add additional prompts to your prompt book, all right? So we'll say submit. And again, just realize that this is live. Daily tip. This is a live test, so just be aware that, you know, there may be some problems, and I think that you'll see those pretty quickly, if I'm not mistaken. We'll see if it's able to handle all these requests here. Unable to find information. Okay, so this is probably a very new CVE, and that's probably why it failed. So you can see that, again, just in terms of like real world, you know, I was just trying to look up something that was actual. and that didn't really work out that well. Okay. So let's say maybe if we just do SQL injection, and then we'll try to search for something that's a little bit more detailed. No threat intelligence, mitigations. Let's see if it can understand it. It wasn't even able to find the vulnerability though. So I am going to cancel these and then delete that one. Okay. So again, this is one of those things where just a little bit annoying because it wasn't able to find it, so the rest of it is going to fail, obviously. All right. So we'll just delete all of that. Let's start from the top. Okay. And let me grab a maybe an older vulnerability. There are so many different types. Sonic wall. Okay. Maybe this will be something that it can see. Let's try this one again. So already kind of running into problems. Again, you can see, hopefully it makes sense like what I was talking about, because to me, it should have been able to handle that because it's a CVE, it's published. How is it pulling CVE numbers? Like I should be able to pull it directly from, the CVE website to understand stuff, but maybe giving an older one will help here. So let's see what it's capable of. Your goals or Copilot's goals. Tell it what you want it to do. If Copilot gets it wrong at first, redirect it by editing the prompt, adding more info as needed. There we go. SQL injection vulnerability in the prod page.cfm of Sonic Wall Aventail. This vulnerability allows remote attackers to execute arbitrary SQL commands by exploiting category ID parameter. So this is a very basic thing, but it gives you a reference, which is pretty cool. It's directly from Microsoft and tells you the technology that you need to watch out for. Okay. No threat intelligence articles or threat actors associated. Okay, so I guess that is technically a good sign. If we were worried about the CVE affecting us, then that would be something that we could take a look at if there was something there. So let's see if it can help us understand mitigations. Okay, nice. Specific mitigation. So update input validation on the category ID parameter. That is true. That's exactly how you'd fix this. Parameterized queries, right? Very good idea. Generic mitigations. WAF, yes. Regular security audits, yes. User education, correct. So it got all that right. And then let's see what it's capable of in terms of a executive summary for those of us who are less technically inclined. And here's your executive summary report for the CVE ID. And again, that's exactly what we're looking for, something basic that we could throw into like a report, right? So if we were looking up a CVE, this one worked pretty well, right? Being able to take that information and say, okay, help me figure some information out. That's actually really cool, all right? So let's take a look at another one. I'm going to have a more freeform one here, and we're going to say show me the top 10 IP addresses performing attacks against my organization. Let's see if it's capable of handling this here. Write clear prompts, whether commands or questions, be specific. Long is okay. Even give an example of your ideal response. I mean, hopefully it'll be able to handle stuff like this, but again, we're going to find out. So what it does, the first step that it does here is it tries to determine what source to use. So I have KQL for Microsoft Defender XDR implemented as a source. So it chose that based off my question. And then it says, okay, now process, and now here's the information that matters, okay? Now the problem here, all right, the problem here, and I've seen this quite a few times already through my process, is that even though it's able to give me a KQL query, first of all, it says that the displayed output is 0, that there is no output. But if I take this query and I take it directly to KQL, right, through advanced hunting in Microsoft Defender. I know this is a whole other thing here, but just stick with me here. If I take this and I search for information in my environment, regardless of the outcome, it's not correct, because Copilot said that there was no output. That basically there is nothing that matched this query. And you can see the same thing. So if it would have shown me nothing here, that's a problem, because why did it create something that showed me nothing? And then if it would have shown me something through the threat hunting platform, then why did it say that it had 0, right? So there's still some issues here, and I'm not 100% sure on why these things happen. But it is definitely something to consider when you're using these tools. I think that my prompts probably need a little bit of work. So let's try that. Let's try, I need you to give me a KQL query that will show the latest, the top 10 IP addresses from the latest threats that have been categorized in Defender. I need to see output. Don't give me a KQL query that has no output. And I will say, please, if you guys don't know about this, okay, this is one of those weird things where if you are talking to a human, it's better to say please, right? It is also better to say please to an LLM, because not because the LLM is a human, but because the LLM understands, based off its data set, that being nice, that it should give you better responses when you're being nice to it. That sounds ridiculous, but it is 100% factual. Okay, see, so this one still gives me no information. Can you change that KQL to make sure that it gives me 10 IP addresses as output? The last 2 prompts have created KQL queries with 0 output, and this is unacceptable. So I'm trying to relay to it, again, through best way that I can. And did we just run into a problem? It didn't seem to take my request. I wonder if I've already hit my limit. Try talking to it again, and it looks like it is failing now. So I'm going to, you can see it just stopped responding every time I hit enter. Not only does the prompt go away, which is a little bit annoying, right? So be sure to save your prompts if they're long. But I'm going to refresh here. Is a professional guesser. Can you give me a better query that will 100% give me output? And again, for whatever reason, this is kind of what I was talking about, is it will randomly fail. Now, is that a problem with US East? Is that a problem with my SCUs? Is that a problem with, you know, with not allowing it to do queries in other data centers and in other regions? I'm not 100%, to be honest, because this is a black box. There is no way for me to troubleshoot this. And to be honest, there is no way for Microsoft to troubleshoot this either. They're not going to be able to tell you like, hey, oh yeah, right now, like the reason that query failed is because of this, this, and this reason. No, none of that exists. I almost guarantee you that if you call Microsoft support, they're not going to be able to help you with any of this. Not the like, oh, it failed because of this reason. Nope. So if it's just not working, it's just not working. Let's try pulling a new prompt book and see if we can take this down a different path. So let me ask it a new question. So can you show me the latest threats in the last 6 months? Let's do latest incidents. There we go. Oh, and there it is. So I've already hit my SU limit, and that's why it stopped responding. Very annoying that it doesn't tell me that on the surface and that I just have to understand how this works. But that's how long I had, about 15 minutes. Right? And so it's they weren't wrong when they said that you need about 3 for an hour worth of processing. And that's probably because I threw a bunch of information at it that it failed to find. So it was searching, and all that searching cost me compute. Right? So again, that's $4 right there. That's $4 gone. And basically I think the way that it works is after the hour is up, so I get 1 SEU of compute per hour. Once that hour is up, then it will give me another SEU, and it'll charge me another $4. But if I want more capabilities within that hour, I have to spend more than $4 an hour. I have to buy more SEU units. So again, that's very confusing to me in terms of how that works, but that's the type of stuff that we could do. Let's try let me try increasing the SEU cap. Let's see if I can even do that. Where was that at? It's a Copilot test. Yep. So we want to say, there we go. And then let's change it to 3, I guess. But again, you just want to be sure that that it's available, that you're not going to overdo it, right? We have to be sure we turn this off after we're done. Okay. Reflect in my next bill. Everything with Security Copilot is about money. Okay, so let's go ahead and refresh this. So you see how it started actually working like instantly. It's like it didn't take that for whatever reason. Go ahead and ask that question there. Come on, Copilot. Refresh. Okay, it's not working for some reason. Let's create a new one here. Refresh one more time. It seems like it started working like almost instantly, but am I still getting that error? I am. So again, I'm not exactly sure how this isn't working. I'll try to go into one of my other sessions here. Good info equals good output. Can you give me a KQL query that 100% has output? Let's see if it responds to that. Nope. Okay, so again, this is one of those things where it doesn't really make sense. Like I don't fully understand why this didn't work, right? Look, I updated the units. Let's go to overview. We have 3 units provisioned. It says that they were provisioned immediately and they immediately took effect. But you can see that, of course, we're running into some issues. There are no prompts in the session. Yeah, so again, it's confusing. It's almost like there's a limit beyond the limit that you are requesting. So we're going to call it there because again, I don't fully grasp how to even get past. I don't think that I can get past this. I think this is a limit that is like designed so that you can't make too many requests, right? I think we're at the try again later. I don't think that it has anything to do with our allowed usage. I think that that we've hit a upper limit for just the Azure itself. So again, just be aware that that is a big part of this tool that you need to be aware of. Okay, so I'm going to delete this this instance so that I don't get charged any more money. So we're just going to delete that there. We should have no instances. There we go. No capacities available. Then if we refresh Security Copilot, will get this response, and this is it trying to ask us to create a new one, which we don't want to do. So that means that it's not working. We're not being charged for it. That's good. All right, and that is my live presentation. Again, I knew that we'd run into issues. I didn't know where they would be, and I thought that I'd be able to get past them by adding in new SEUs. But as you could see, we ran into more problems. So this is one of those things where if your stock analysts are trying to use this, you know, it might just be a good way to do some operations, to automate some operations rather than doing it all yourself, I guess. Okay. And that is the end of our live training here. We're also going to be talking about continuing your learning, getting Microsoft certified. All right. So Netcom again is a very large provider of Microsoft certification and training, one of their largest providers, if not the largest. And so again, we work very closely with Microsoft pretty consistently. All right. So again, training is very important. If you're looking to get people trained, if you want to see that impact from some of this training, right, or from some of this knowledge, you need to get your employees trained. Even if it's not you, right, maybe it's your team. Those are the types of people that you would want to get trained here, right? So training improves timeliness, insight, business impact, right? Efficiency, capabilities, job satisfaction. I mean, who doesn't want to work for an organization that is training their team members, right? That's the type of stuff that you would want to see from an organization. That's the type of place you would want to work. So again, if you are a part of the leadership team, if you're trying to figure out, you know, well, what should we be doing, training your employees and your technicians and your staff is a great way to get started, especially from a technical perspective. It will lead to a more productive, to a happier staff. All right. Yep, so you can grow your business and career with official Microsoft role-based instructor-led classroom training. Do not hesitate to reach out to us at Netcom for that training, right? We can cover many different avenues, fundamentals, associate expert, and specialty certifications from Microsoft, and that is very wide-ranging from AZ900 all the way to SC200 or SC500 or even SC100 if necessary. You can see all the key highlights that you get if you work with us here at Netcom. You get Microsoft certified trainers, MCTs, doing the technical subject matter expertise. You get 100-day access, 180-day access to extensive virtual labs that cover the information specifically. 90-day access to recordings with instructor-led classes. And of course, full access to our portal, opportunities for free repeats, and experience with 24/7 priority support. So if you need anything from a training perspective, from a technical perspective, maybe you're having issues getting into the portal, you know, we're here to support you on that as well. So we believe that we have a really good product, a really good opportunity to facilitate training for you and your organization. So again, keep that in mind. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need support. All right, some facts about Microsoft certification renewals. Of course, there are many benefits to renewing it, like making sure that you're continuously learning, that continuous learning mindset, making sure that your job role is not affected because you don't have a cert anymore, validating your skills, not only for yourself, but also for your employer. And you can also renew your certifications with Microsoft for free without having to pay for them, which is really nice. Certification renewal requirements, you have to do it within a certain amount of time from when the expiration happens. You get emails about those expiration dates from Microsoft, so they let you know to renew your certification, pass the associated assessment on Microsoft Learn before the cert actually expires. So that deadline is very kind of stringent, but they'll let you know about that. And then passing the renewal assessment on Microsoft Learn is the only way to renew. You can't pass it again. Basically, you need to just go through Microsoft Learn. And honestly, I've already done that, and it wasn't that hard. It was actually fairly easy, and it felt like a quiz, really. So it was actually pretty easy to do. And once I did it, I was done and updated certification. All right.
Thank you, Logan. That was very informative. I know everyone is looking forward to the Q&A session, so go ahead and start putting your questions into the questions panel. And while you do that, I would like to give the presentation rights over to Sagnik, our vendor manager, to introduce you to our promotions and webinar related courses.
So as you can see on my screen, this is the event handout that you all have received. Once again, we thank you all for taking out the time and joining our masterclass today. As part of this handout, you'd see the content section wherein the different sections within the document have been listed here, and everything is hyperlinked. So you can quickly use these links to jump to the specific section of the document. Before we proceed, it's worth mentioning that Netcom Learning, we are the proud winners of the Microsoft Partner of the Year award for 2 years in a row. So as we say, the legacy continues. In 2022, we were the Partner of the Year worldwide, and in 2023, we were the Partner of the Year for United States. And we are also a Microsoft Cloud Solutions partner. That means that we have capabilities across all the 6 solution areas recognized by Microsoft. A few more things about us. We are in the training industry for over 25 years now, having serviced over 80% of the Fortune 1000 companies, serviced 100 plus US military bases. Overall, we have trained 1 million plus professionals across 36,000 plus unique enterprises, and we enjoy a 96% recommendation rate from our customers. All our trainings on Microsoft are delivered by instructors that are certified and authorized by Microsoft. And our overall instructor pool stands at about 3,200 plus certified professionals. We are your one-stop solution for all your corporate upskilling needs with official training across every major technology and business solution provider. So as we can see over here, we are an authorized training partner for all the industry leaders across Microsoft, AWS, Cisco, CompTIA, PMI, EC Council, and others. Now, within this handout, you'd also find this particular page wherein you can find the session recording. You can use the link to access the recording for today's session and revisit the concepts that were covered in today's masterclass. Also, all the participants will be given access to Netcom 365. It is our student portal that includes a lot of features and resources for you to take advantage of to supercharge your skilling journey. All you need to do if you're accessing it and activating it for the first time is set up your password and then you'd be good to go. We highly recommend everyone to explore our learning portal to take full advantage of all your skilling resources. Now let's quickly take a look at some of the latest offers on Microsoft trainings and certifications. First up, we have the Microsoft Quick Start program, which is applicable across the entire portfolio, encompassing Azure, Security, Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, and Power Platform. It is truly the best in class exclusive enterprise discount offering on your end-to-end Microsoft training across the official portfolio. The pricing model is quite simple and straightforward. If you have a team, if whether you are a large organization or a small organization, and you have a team to train across departments or within the same department, we have two options for you depending on your team size. If you are looking to train more than 15 learners, you would be getting a flat discounted pricing of $300 per day per learner. And of course, as the number of days for the particular training increases, the the amount also increases, but you get significant savings on this. If you are having a smaller team, that is 14 learners or less, then you still are entitled to a $400 discounted flat pricing per day per learner. This really accounts to huge savings when it comes to large scale training. So we highly recommend everyone to get in touch with us, explore the offering by clicking on the link provided in this handout. And all your trainings can also be customized based on the specific projects and workloads that you and your team, your organization is working on. And our industry specific subject matter expertise encompasses a wide range of verticals, as you can see over here, from banking and financial services, healthcare, federal and state and local government, to education, energy, manufacturing, retail, consumer goods, and more. Also, you'd find that if you have a team, if you are a big organization or a small organization, having a team that you're looking to train, our 2-hour private group training demo is also a great option for you as the next step. It is free of cost, as we say, you can see over here, and it is customizable as per your needs. So rather than a public delivery, which was the format of today's session, you're going to get a private group training wherein our instructor is going to connect with you, understand your specific requirements, and our learning consultants are going to map out your specific needs and accordingly tailor the skilling plan that makes sense for you and your business. So these training demos are provide a great value because these are customizable. All the trainings are delivered by our top rated trainers, and you get a complimentary skilling plan consultation, allowing you to get clarity on which specific courses are needed to be taken by your team. And in case you are a large organization, you are a multi-shore firm with multiple divisions and your workforce spread across geographies, or you have multiple business units within the same organization, the skilling needs kind of get complicated in those scenarios, right? But how do you manage your training funds in that case? That's why we have the Learning Passport, which provides a flexible team training package. Basically, you park all your training funds with us for 12 months. And within these 12 months, you get exceptional value on the funds that you invest, right? Up to 100% increase of your fund value is what you can experience with our Learning Passport. And these funds are flexible. That means you can use it to train irrespective of the individual that you want to opt in for. A simple distinction with the Netcom Plus is that it is mapped to the specific learner and it is only valid for that learner. But in Learning Passport, you get that additional flexibility that for one particular course, you can pick one particular learner, and for another, you can use your same training dollars for another course. This is basically giving you unlimited access to our entire authorized training portfolio of 4,000 plus official courses. So we highly recommend you to check this out if you have such skilling requirements, especially keeping in mind that the end of the year is coming, and we are aware that organizations need to finalize their training budgets. If they don't use it, they kind of lose it. So this is an ideal solution for you guys to park your training funds and make sure you get the ultimate value all year round. Now we will take a look at the recommended courses that we have. Over here, you can see the courses that are related to today's topic have been mapped here, divided by fundamentals and role-based. So we highly recommend everyone to click on these links. All of these are hyperlinked. Pick the item that you want to explore and you'd be redirected to the official documentation that we have on these particular courses. Also, please note that all the courses that are delivered by Netcom Learning are delivered by subject matter experts. You get additional perks like 180 days access to virtual labs wherever applicable. Also, you get access to 90 days to the class recordings to revisit the concepts. You get full access to our Netcom 365 portal, as well as you can repeat the classes free of cost within a specified duration if you want to revisit or you couldn't attend the first time. We also have a couple of free resources mapped here, like our upcoming free event and a blog. We highly recommend you to explore those as well. With that, I'd like to thank everyone. Do follow us on our social handles, and we hope to see you soon once again on one of our events and classes. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much for guiding us through that information, Sagnik. And now we're going to go ahead and jump right into our question and answer session. Our first question is, how will Security Copilot help my organization improve its cybersecurity posture?
Okay, so that's a great question. Security Copilot is really designed to improve the capabilities of your technicians. From a guiding perspective or from a learning or training perspective, it can help you do a deep dive on information and research very quickly without much effort. And in my opinion, it also seems like a tool that you would maybe even run in the background while you're doing other things, saying like, "Hey, I want to do research on this specific thing, or learn about this specific vulnerability or this attack path or this exploit, maybe this exploit code or script." And you can have it analyze that information while you do other things, right? Have it run in the background because it's not super fast, and you only get so many requests per amount of time. So again, I think those prompt books will be the best way to utilize that. And the way that that increases your cybersecurity posture is it helps with automation, right? So if your technicians are in a more automated, time commitment, if they understand that automation can kind of help them do a whole lot more than just what they're capable of doing, then that will lead to a more secure organization just overall. Right? Automation is becoming a key component of cybersecurity operations for a SOC because, again, if the attackers are automating, so too must the defenders.
Our second question is, why shouldn't I use another LLM instead?
So again, great question here. LLMs, again, the large language models, also known as AI. There are a lot of them out there. ChatGPT, Grok, a few others. What is it? It used to be called Bard, and now it's called Gemini, I think, from Google. There's a lot of LLMs out there, and you could use any of them. But again, which of those actually have access to your environment, right? The only one that can do that is Microsoft Security Copilot. So if you're trying to utilize these LLMs to directly access data for your entire organization in the cloud, you could just think, hundreds of devices all over the world, multiple regions. How is that actually going to be directly affected? How are you going to secure that set of data? The really only way to do that is with something like Security Copilot, something that has access to all that information. A standard LLM, you could ask questions, right? And you're going to get responses. It may even be able to help you understand information about attacks, but can it do any contextual understanding with your data? No, because it won't have access to it, right? Security Copilot is the only one that really at the moment has access to all that information at a glance so that it can help you contextualize information as you go through and ask all those questions and figure out, what you're looking for, right? If I have a question of, what are the latest attack paths against my organization? I wish we could have seen that during the live demonstration, but the tool, Security Copilot, will be able to tell you this is what's happening, this is where it's coming from, and this is what you can do. So that's really, really good.
Third question of the day is, what makes Security Copilot worth the investment?
So again, great question because from my perspective, finance is a huge topic with this tool because it is not cheap, right? That is just a fact of the matter, right? Um, it may sound cheap, I guess, for dollars per SEU, but as you can see, it's about 15 minutes of use use time. Because again, that compute takes a lot of money. It has to do a lot of stuff. So is it worth it? I mean, again, that's going to be a decision that every organization has to make for themselves. I do think that it would totally make sense to do kind of like a trial run and to spend money on some compute, but only during like active use, right? So if that means, 9 to 5, if that's only, 11 to 1, if that's only 9 to 11 in the morning, if you want to make it like part of your process, to me, 100% makes sense. If you're trying to leave it on 24/7, I don't think that makes any sense at all, right? Like if your organization is going to say, we're going to let this run 24/7 all the time, that way anyone can have access to it for just one SCU, that's $3,000 a month. That is the same price as a full-blown MSP, MSSP partner that does all of this work for you, right? That will come on site whenever your stuff breaks, that will help you fix stuff in the cloud, that will help you troubleshoot problems, that will stand in for you with vendors doing, vendor interaction and stuff like that. $3,000 a month gets you that as a service, as a standard organization. And you're telling me that's the same cost for a tool that I can use for about 15 minutes every hour, 24/7? It doesn't necessarily make sense to me from that perspective. So I think the financial side is very important when you're making these types of decisions about whether or not we should utilize this tool, and your usage of that tool, right? You could call it FinOps, financial operations of this utility of Microsoft Security Copilot, is front and center of that conversation. It has to be, because it costs so much money. So if you're using it in the right way, I think it makes sense. If you're turning it on and turning it off as needed, I think that makes sense. If you're leave it on all the time, I would be more hesitant to say that it's worth that type of expenditure.
And finally, our last question is, will this genuinely enhance my technician's workflow?
Again, fantastic question, right? This is more speaking to, does the tool actually work? Does the tool do the thing that it's been designed and and sold to do? The answer to that question is yes, but it's probably more limited than you realize. Again, as a serverless function, it is more that Microsoft is more than capable of increasing the functionality of this tool into the future, and we're not even going to know. Just someday I'm going to be wrong in terms of how capable it is, because they're going to add more functionality. And once that happens, it's going to be a lot better. If it can, for instance, if it can perform automated remediation, or this is what I would want it to do. Real world, actual use case. If I was a tier 3 SOC analyst and I was using Security Copilot, this is what I would ask it to do. Okay, I would say, look at the most recent attack paths against our organization, create threat hunting queries that are similar to those attack paths, but may find things that bypass some of our tools like Microsoft Defender XDR, and then create those KQL queries for threat hunting, create automated threat detection to search for those queries, to search for that attack path in our environment over a certain amount of time. So like, I want you to do a threat hunt for that attack every day, once a day. And then I want you to also help me create an automated remediation through a Jupyter notebook in Python for that specific attack, to resolve that through automated remediation. And I want you to do all of those steps for me from beginning to end. If Microsoft Security Copilot was capable of doing that at any point in the future, that tool is going to be extremely good. If it's capable of doing that based off of contextual real world information against your environment, that is going to be when Microsoft Security Copilot really comes into its own and is able to effectively increase and enhance the capabilities of even your tier 3 SOC analysts, right? Your senior SOC analysts, the ones that you're paying the big bucks, the 6-figure job roles. Those guys, I don't, at the moment, from what I've seen, again, this is just my opinion, I don't think that they're going to get a lot of use out of this tool. from a guiding perspective and a learning perspective for your SOC 1 and SOC 2 analysts, I think that's a great place for this tool to be utilized. But until it is really capable of using that higher level stuff and being able to do threat hunting and automated remediation with Python and all that stuff contextually, I think it's not going to do what everyone wants it to do. But again, it has to do with your use case. If most of your technicians need to be trained and they're like, well, you maybe you're worried about how good they are at determining whether or not something is a false positive. I think that is really where Security Copilot could effectively increase the capabilities of your technicians and would actually be worth the money. Again, as long as it is handled from a financial operations perspective in the right way, I think Security Copilot could actually be useful for your organization, not just making your technicians more efficient, not just making it easier, not just helping them learn and guide them through the process, but also increasing the cybersecurity posture of your organization as a whole.
Once again, I want to remind you that as you leave this session today, you will be presented with a short survey. We would like to request for you to help us by taking a quick moment to participate in that survey. Your feedback really helps us understand your learning experience as we are constantly looking at how we can improve our future sessions. The survey answers are measured on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 representing outstanding and 1 representing poor. We want to thank all of you for joining us today, and if you do come up with any additional questions, feel free to send them to webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. We hope that you found today's webinar informative, and we look forward to seeing you back here with us soon. Feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Have a great day, everyone.